SZA is one of the biggest pop stars on the face of the earth. She's currently 14th in the world in Spotify monthly listeners. She's the proud owner of 4 Grammys, and she's got 1 or 2 classic albums, depending on who you ask. She's in a position to do whatever she wants. Whoever she wants to get in the studio with, presumably, they would drop everything they have and run. So in 2023, when she dropped a collaborative single with an independent artist named Dawson, people should have started paying attention to him, if they hadn't already. If SZA isn't enough for you, Beyonce had Gene in the studio for her latest album Cowboy Carter, doing string arrangements for the song Flamenco. Gene is a lot more than these big name collaborations though. He has a die-hard fan base, a consistent message, and both a unique sound and visual palette, both of which have shifted the way that artists, big and small, create. But before all that, David Sanders was born in California in 1995 to a black father from Long Beach and a mother from Mexico. He spent his childhood split between Spring Valley, California, which is a little bit outside of San Diego, and Tijuana, Mexico. When he was living in Tijuana, he was still going to school in California, so he would wake up every day super early in the morning to cross the border. With all that travel every day, he had plenty of time to listen to music. He told the magazine Remezcla in 2020 that on those rides he was listening to everything from grunge to rap to Britpop to new wave to rock and Espanol. It wouldn't take too long to find a song in his current discography that could match up to every single one of those genres. But the first art form he dove into formally wasn't music, it was film. After high school, he moved to LA to study film at Cal State Los Angeles. A lot of musicians get into film and visual media out of necessity, as a skill they need to develop to either push the connection to their art deeper, or more cynically get attention on short-form video platforms like TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. I can tell you from personal experience that visual stuff wasn't really my thing growing up. Or at least I would have never identified as someone who was like super into movies or TV. I was the kind of person who would walk out of every movie and be like, oh, it was good. I definitely wasn't writing like 6-paragraph letterbox reviews or anything like that. But constantly being in front of the camera to push my own music has broadened my horizons a ton. Working with videographers, you're constantly surrounded with people who view visual art the way that you view music, and their love for it bleeds off onto you. It's gotten to the point where, much like how I'm not able to listen to music anymore without thinking about how it was made, I can't watch movies, TV, or music videos anymore without thinking about how it was shot or edited, or even colored. Gene came into music as someone who already had the utmost respect for visual art, and it comes across in the stuff that he puts out. That doesn't mean Gene wasn't making music while he was in film school. He had a few early aliases, including Days, Toshi, and Donnie Dawson. There are SoundCloud playlists full of his early work, but even on Spotify, the Donnie Dawson page is still up, and it has these releases from 2015 and 2016. The song Stained Bones has a little bit more of a lax vocal approach than you might hear on a Gene song now, but production-wise, you can kind of hear what he was going for. Also, the title Stained Bones to the song that we'll see later, Clear Bones, there's a direct line. So it's the same guy working on this stuff. You know, he's figuring it out in real time. Aren't we all? Eventually, when he really did figure it out, he would change his name to Gene Dawson in 2018. But before all that, if you like videos on music, I would really appreciate if you could throw me a like and subscribe. I drop a video at least once a week. Some are longer and more in-depth looks at artists like Gene. Others are like shorter reactions to things going on. But either way, if you want to see all my videos early, you can go to my Instagram, HADJI Gaviota, throw me a follow and join my broadcast channel. In that channel, I post a link to all my videos one day early. Also, I'm dropping a song soon, hopefully this month, called Tricky. I've been teasing it a lot on social media. If you like the instrumental playing, it's from that song, so that should give you an idea. I'll drop the pre-save link in the description. Also, if you're in New York, I'm playing a show on July 15th with Gal the Arsonist and a bunch of other really dope artists at Elsewhere. Would love to see you there. All right, back to the video. So in 2018, he released his first song under the moniker Gene Dawson called Glacier Gallery. It was released through Kitsune Musique, which some people may recognize from the clothing brand with the fox on it, Maison Kitsune. It's the same company. They also have a record label. I would know. I actually have a release with them. My song called Hittin' Different came out in 2020, and I released it through Kitsune Musique. Given that they reached out to me when I wasn't exactly like an A-list artist, I probably had like 50 or 60,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. It's not too surprising that they were able to find someone like Gene as well. I was even able to find an article about the Glacier Gallery single release on this random blog website called Broadway World. The blog calls it Glacial Gallery, which should show you the level of effort that they put into talking about it, but there are still some interesting bits of information. They mention how Gene and his roommate and collaborator Lex Stacy had been working on Gene's debut project over the course of 3 years. While Glacier Gallery wouldn't actually end up making it onto that project, from the promo art posted on the blog article, If you squint really hard, you can see the album's title, Bad Sports. Well, okay, it's not technically an album. Gene told Pigeons and Planes in 2020 that Bad Sports was more than a mixtape, less than an album. But regardless how you classify it, it was released in 2019. The songs Bullfighter, Napster, and Blame by Me were all released ahead of the album. He dropped a double video for Bullfighter and Napster titled Memory is Software. That is the real introduction to the world of the album or project, whatever you want to call it. But it's really a visual introduction into the world of Gene Dawson. It starts with split screens of couples making out, people smoking, and Gene putting in a big shiny ass grill. The juxtaposition of the actors making out and Gene sitting on his car hood by himself hint towards the themes of loneliness and dejection that we'll get in the music. The second half of the video, the Bullfighter part, gives us more context for the world of Gene Dawson. We get a live band setup with guitars, angel wings, jewels on his face, and a basketball. As the sun comes up at the end of the night, it feels like how one of those late adolescent nights would be represented in a coming-of-age movie. When Gene sat down with Jade Gomez in 2020 for Pigeons and Planes, he said as much. I think for me, it was just the story of growth. It's all a coming-of-age story for a kid with my kind of upbringing, which I knew more people than just myself had. My intention is to show that I have more in common with people than I give myself credit for. And the way that I can express that is through music. I took the ideas that I had for an album and condensed them into a few points where it's like, hey, I'm a kid just like you. I go through pretty tough shit just like you. When the project dropped, it did so alongside a video for 90s Green Screen, which was directed by Julian Klinkowitz, who also did Beyonce's Homecoming video and a bunch of work for Kanye West. 90s Green Screen is probably my favorite song on Bad Sports. I think it's a great introduction into the way that Gene plays in the worlds of rock and hip hop at the same time. There's a double time rap verse that the song starts with, before it abruptly drops into some indie rock chords. The shouted chorus about having a Glock ready to protect yourself from the cops is juxtaposed with those chords and the guitar solo. The video is sick too. He performs with this full jewel mask that feels like a homage to Kanye West's Margiela designed mask from the Yeezus tour era. The cameras are set so you can see the different lights used on him to project different colors, which all comes together to feel like a statement about what it means to be an artist and a public-facing figure, especially when paired with the lyrics, "Everybody wanna be the new son of God." Beyond just in visual format, Gene directly references his influences a few times on here too, and it's fun to see how wide-ranging they are. On Pity Party, he quotes Streetlights by Kanye, and also Andre 3000's verse on Pink Matter by Frank Ocean. The beginning of the song Blame by Me borrows Spanish language lyrics from a song called Yo No Fui by the Mexican artist Pedro Fernandez. You start to see the picture painted of the world that Gene grew up in, driving back and forth between these two worlds every day, combined with the infinite influence of the internet at his fingertips, as we see in song titles like Napster. The rest of the album is great too. Another favorite of mine is Sick Girl Online, which from my own interpretation, mixed in with lyrics about taking the bus to San Francisco, and his tweet about how he dated a girl in San Francisco for almost 10 years, is about the ins and outs and stresses of a long-distance relationship, something that I personally can relate to from an earlier time in my life. There's something about those long, empty, winding roads on your way to see somebody that you love that can feel surreal, never-ending, dangerous, exciting, exhausting. Love generally has him pretty fucked up on the album though. On Pity Party, he breaks a girl's heart because he only wanted to sleep with her. And on the next track, Mala Mariposa, he starts to peel away at why he might be this way, because of hurt in his past. I'm the lonely lover boy, I'm the only person I enjoy, I'm the petty product of a friend zone. The most consistent lyrical theme throughout the album, and honestly, throughout his discography, is Gene's preparation to defend himself. On 90s Green Screen, it's from the cops specifically. But on 0%, he lets you know that this matte black 45 is always off safety. On Bullfighter, he lets you know that he'll squeeze quicker, my ligaments on a twitch, hitting anyone that looks at me foreign. Both his outlook on love and the need to protect himself align with what he told MTV in 2020 about his own experiences coming of age. I was never the popular kid in school. I was the kid in the library with one friend. And we'd talk every day about the internet and what we saw on the internet. After Bad Sports, Gene would become what many kids found on the internet themselves. My first exposure to Gene Dawson came during the pandemic, and I was immediately hooked. I was going on a lot of these bike rides. They were the most exciting part of my day for a few months, so whatever I listened to on those bike rides really stuck with me. When you go into some of the comments on his older YouTube videos, you see things alluding to him being a quarantine discovery. This was my own experience, but it seems like kind of a shared one. And I find it cool that someone who's talked at length about spending hours at a time on the internet had their career arc align with when Most of the world was spending hours at a time on the internet bored. He followed up the bad sports era with a Lucy single called Ooga Booga that feels like a fever dream and a speed run of all the Gene Dawson influences at once. The beginning feels like an auto-tuned Kanye or Travis Scott section, and then it abruptly jumps into yell rapping with lyrics about antidepressants and RIP to Nipsey Hussle before he gets Spanish with it. The song is a bit all over the place and a little bit overlooked in Gene's discography, but it does feel like a precursor to some of the louder and wackier moments on the next project. With the bad sports era closed, Gene's star was rising, both to music lovers on the internet and among tastemakers and creatives. There's no surprise here. Even during the bad sports era, he was working with these really talented and tapped in people like Lex Stacy and the videographer Julian Klinkowitz. In 2019, Gene was also spotted with Brockhampton's Kevin Abstract, who was around the same time said to be having a great time at one of Gene's shows. Gene opened for Yeek in Los Angeles, and according to his Best New Artist write-up in Pigeons and Planes in 2019, Kevin went on Instagram after and called his set the best show I've seen in a minute. It wasn't just Kevin who was enthralled with the young upstart Gene. At some point in 2019 or 2020, he caught the attention of the legendary producer Rick Rubin, who signed him to his publishing company, American Songs. He also caught the attention of A$AP Rocky, which he spoke about in an interview with Noisy. He met Rocky in early 2020, which was cool for him because he remembers seeing the Peso video when he was in high school and thinking this is the coolest shit ever. As a kid going to high school in New York City, me too. So it comes to no surprise that A$AP Rocky was the only feature on Gene's next project, and his first album if you don't consider Bad Sports to be one, which is called Pixel Bath. The Pixel Bath era began in February 2020 with the single and video for the song Bruise Boy. It's an evolution of the sound from Bad Sports, catchier, more cleverly structured, and more refined. The video is amazing. Some of my favorite shots are the water reflection one, the stuff with the motorcycle, and the moving bed. The lyrics are very repetitive, but likely intentionally so, to push a message to all the kids who see themselves in Gene. You saw my dreams and you saw my face like no way. It's Gene's version of Pharrell's You Can Do It Too. The second single and video, Power Freaks, followed in April of 2020. The song structure is kind of like Ooga Booga, except executed way better in my opinion. It opens with the angelic, melodic part, and then bursts with this up-tempo rock energy. But both of these parts are a lot stronger in Power Freaks than they were in Ooga Booga. The lyrics continue the themes of believing in yourself and pursuing your path even when nobody else thinks you can do it. With the refrain, I know all the things that are bad for me, I don't really care what they say. The video features some of Gene's most iconic shots, including the moving truck with the back open and the couch, and the retro 1990s computer for a headshot. For a long time, Power Freaks was Gene's most popular and most streamed song. Before dropping the next video, Gene dropped another single, Policia, in June 2020, coinciding with the rising protests in America and around the world surrounding the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and general police brutality in the United States. He gave all the song's proceeds to charities surrounding those causes, and also did a collaborative t-shirt with the streetwear brand Ignored Prayers, with 100% of the proceeds from the shirt going to the charities Inner City Arts, Black Trans Travel Fund, and the Innocence Project. The song itself is a protest song that has Gene singing in both Spanish and English, continuing the bilingual songwriting approach that he showed in Bad Sports, but giving us a teaser of how his songwriting would expand on the next project, to become more topical and specific. The third video and fourth single, Clear Bones, arrived later in June 2020. I don't remember exactly what caught my attention with Gene and put me onto him, but I'm pretty sure it was this shot of him boxing in the open field. This shot is so pretty and creative, and it fits the music so well, with the charging bass line that reminds me of I Bleed by the Pixies from their album Doolittle, which is a personal favorite of mine from childhood. The song is all about accepting the inevitability of death, but hoping you can push back its arrival a little, yelling out, "Mr. Reaper, will you wait on me? Mr. Reaper, let's play hide and seek." He talked to MTV about the reckless times in his life that led him to write this song. A lot of it is fun and games, and you don't realize, oh shit, I could die. Like, yo, I've done a lot of shit where I could have been killed, and I haven't yet. So it's probably time where I become way more cognizant of the stuff that I'm doing, or I'm gonna end up meeting Mr. Reaper. Gene and I are the same age, so one of the reasons I feel like I relate to him so much is our timelines kind of line up. And so he was making music about realizing you aren't invincible around the same time that I was coming to terms with my own mortality. I'm a pretty risk-averse person, so people may have more death-defying stories than this, but I used to skate for miles at a time in New York City, at night, running red lights, no helmet, sometimes combining that with other hobbies that I probably shouldn't have been. When I think about all the times that I was a few seconds away from getting annihilated by like a 2005 Toyota Corolla, at 28, I'm like, oh man, never again. All three of the aforementioned videos, by the way, were directed by Zachary Bailey. I feel like I gotta shout him out. Gene's definitely heavily involved in his videos, but like the whole team that he works with is just top notch. The fourth and final video and the fifth single before the album was Starface in September. It's a continuation of that coming of age theme, with the world of the album starting to unfurl, from the pixel bath grill to the iconic star ski mask. Cameos like Brockhampton's Matt Champion show how his reputation in the LA left of center music scene was cementing. The next month, we were given the full project, Pixel Bath. Before we talk about anything on Pixel Bath, we gotta talk about the cover, which I genuinely think is the best album cover of the 2020s. Sidebar, does 2020 count with the 2010s or the 2020s? I think it's the 2020s, but honestly, I'm not sure. Who cares though, I guess, right? Anyways, the colors, from the sharp blue background to the iridescence of the football helmet visor, and then the little peak of the grill you can see in his mouth. No notes. It's amazing. It's immediately eye-catching. And at a time, especially now, when an artist might throw up like a crop from a music video or like a selfie of their shoe as a cover art, it's refreshing to see someone take the medium so seriously. It's like one of those albums you immediately want to buy the vinyl of and put it up on your wall. More about the vinyl later. When I think about how legendary this cover art is, I think about this one meme from the infamous and borderline incomprehensible meme page Hyperpop Daily. Now let's get into the music. I love songs on Bad Sports, but Pixel Bath is a level up in every way, shape, and form. The sound is consistent, but even when Gene takes leaps and tries weirder things, which he 100% does on here, they fit the world more cohesively than you might have expected. The biggest leap is 06 Burst. The production, handled by Gene and the Bad Sports collaborator Lex Stacy, starts off by sounding like something on Yeezus. Well, he shouts like a frontman of a hardcore band, before going into a more suave flow, then jumping into the Pharrell flow from the song Mr. Me Too, all within the first minute and a half. And that's already adventurous enough. Then the craziest part starts, with a Microsoft Sam sounding voice, repeating, "I don't keep score, I keep scoring," over and over and over again, while the synths slowly build up into this crazy drop. It sounds like your 1990s or 2000s family computer throwing a house party while you guys were on vacation. This isn't the song you'd show somebody if you wanted to describe what Gene Dawson usually sounds like, but it is the song to show them if you want to blow their face off, or if you just want them to understand where Gene is coming from and what his cultural touchpoints are. Most of the album is a lot closer to what you'd expect from the singles. With that being said though, it's more developed and consistent. The songwriting is stronger, the songs are catchier, and the production is more layered and interesting. There are a handful of producers on the album, but Zach Fogerty appears on 11 out of 13 of the songs, and his chemistry with Gene likely led to that cohesion that we hear. Even though Gene is constantly pulling from these different worlds, it feels like he combines it into its own thing on Pixel Bath. Triple Double with A$AP Rocky is another personal favorite, and what I like about that song is Rocky came into Gene's world rather than the other way around. Whereas a lot of artists, when they get their first big feature, they're going to make something that sounds like, oh, what would insert feature want the song to sound like? We're going to see that more when Gene works with big collaborators in the future. Gene consistently will allow these guys into his world, rather than contorting his vision in their favor. Lyrically on the album, he has a few great lines that help underscore that vision. On Pegasus, he calls himself the Black Bjork and says he's going to make the thugs love Simple Plan. On Triple Double, he calls himself the Black Bowie with a Lil Kobe. He did this in subtler ways on the previous project, by borrowing lyrical references to show his influences. And he still does that here as well, like when he uses one of Pharrell's lines from Mr. Me Too on 06 Burst. But here it feels like he's declaring that message with more authority, with his chest out, if you will. After the success of Pixel Bath, a lot of people rushed to call Gene the future of rock music. I understand that sentiment. Rock is a genre that, despite being founded by black artists, has mostly been associated with white ones in recent years. It's exciting to have artists like Gene and Kenny Hoopla at the forefront of the genre, reminding everyone who really started this shit. And there is a lot to be said about the impact that there is on the next generation, having someone like Gene to look up to. He touched on this in the Pigeons interview in 2020. The first indie rock song that I ever made, I showed it to somebody that was super important to me, almost a mentor. I remember the first thing he said was like, "Why are you trying to fit in with the white kids?" So the fact that he's asked me such a presumptuous question offended me. And I'm like, man, you're somebody that I thought would applaud my versatility. That's the shit I'm trying to fight against. There is no fucking white kid culture, black kid culture. That dividing line that people are trying to put up is super harmful, and people don't understand that shit stops growth on every level. But at the same time, I think reducing Gene's music to one genre is a little bit reductive, and maybe even unfair, given the breadth and scope that he's working with. Like yes, he is deservingly one of the faces of the resurgence of guitar-based music. And if anyone wants to understand what it's like to make rock-tinged music in the 2020s, you need to include Gene Dawson in there. But he raps, he makes pop songs, he sings, he yells. He does so much that getting distracted by the slick riffs and the indie rock chords is Kind of like losing the forest for the trees a little bit, missing things like the moments of wild electronic production and the very specific lyrical touchpoints from rap culture. When he sat down with W magazine ahead of the follow-up to Pixel Bath, which we will get to in a little bit, he talked about his issues with genre. When people ask me what genre I make, I'm like, dude, I don't know. What genre of music did Prince make? I'm not comparing myself to Prince. He's a god among humans, but his music was just Prince. It was everything you needed it to be at the time. A lot is made about how music today is genreless, and in some ways I do think that's true. The iPod era changed the way that a lot of people consumed music, now carrying every song that they've ever wanted with them, instead of just a few CDs to switch back and forth between. In 2 or 3 clicks, you could go from David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust to the rap songs Kobe used to make. Although when Gene was comparing himself to Kobe, I think he was probably thinking more about the basketball court. So the generation raised with this genrelessness, of course, is going to operate with it in their music. And there is an audience for music that jumps around in genre, of course. But the industry doesn't always know what to do with it. Radio, which is still somehow an essential part to breaking an artist in a lot of spaces, is very rigidly compartmentalized into genre. Sure, newer concepts like editorial playlists are a little bit more genre agnostic. But when it comes to other aspects of the industry like the live music world, it can be a lot more segmented. Even newer, higher tech parts of the industry, like the algorithms that deliver us social media content, can struggle to comprehend where to place artists when they don't make the same genre of song every time, or when their sound straddles a few different cultures. I just always want to point this out when I talk about artists who are brave when it comes to playing with genre, because I do it myself, and sometimes it feels like it would be easier if I just made one type of music instead of doing whatever I want. I mean, I think I'm going to keep doing whatever I want, but it still feels like it's worth talking about, you know? Gene had built up a lot of hype coming off Pixel Bath. Because of the pandemic, there wasn't an opportunity to tour in 2020, and opportunities were limited in 2021. I did get the chance to see him in 2021 when the band Junior Varsity was doing these like weekend shows, and it was really sick. It was at a big warehouse in Brooklyn, and I remember seeing some other artists in the crowd. I don't want to name drop, but at the time I was like, oh cool, they like Gene Dawson too, that's sick. The energy was palpable, and I was super close to the speakers, so it was a great reminder to always bring those earplugs when you go to a show, but I had a great time and so did my girlfriend. Early in 2021 we got Burnout, a short film that has Gene talking on a stream of consciousness kind of tip. He got into his indie film bag as usual, talking about everything from his process, to boxing, to his thesis statement. I want to do something bigger than me. We would see he was taking a big step towards that when we got a picture of Gene and SZA in the studio together later that year. That song wouldn't come out for 2 years, and it wouldn't be a part of the next album cycle, but it's a signal of just how much cultural attention he had built up. He dove headfirst into working on that next project, and in late 2021 we got a single called Menthol. The cover shows Gene laying down in a cluttered room that I'm assuming is his bedroom. He told W magazine in a later interview about how he spent months working on the next album in his room, going crazy. You know those movies where a dude is trying to figure out a crime and they have pieces of yarn connected to pins on the wall? It was essentially that, with drawings and guitar progressions written out and shit. My significant other would see me in my room and be like, hey, do I have to call your mom? Because you look like you're losing your mind. Through the clutter, we can see a bunch of cultural references and touch points that align with the Gene Dawson universe. The Jordan 1s hanging on the wall next to a poster of Sonic Youth and a guitar. The framed Nipsey Hussle picture. The Louis Vuitton bag. Another guitar on the ground. It all adds up. The song itself rips. It's his highest streamed song on Spotify to this day. And for good reason. He addresses some of the pressures that come with the attention he's received over the last year or two. It's like I got everyone watching me. No one watching me go. I don't need anything from no one. Coming off the highs and seeing his art travel to these new places, he's seeing the darker side of that too, and he's processing it. As he yells, "Fuck up out my face. I don't smile no more, but we all great." I haven't really mentioned it too much at this point, but Gene Dawson is an independent artist and have released everything so far independently, beyond having that publishing deal with Rick Rubin's American Songs, which in itself is a partnership with Pulse and is not a part of the big three companies. So with the success of Pixel Bath, he surely had suits and labels breathing down his neck. Jumping ahead a little bit, he told Billboard about his first show at his first headlining tour in 2022, and his answers give us an idea of how he feels about those major label guys. The first Los Angeles show blew. There were so many suits in the building, standing in VIP, just staring and analyzing, seeing how they could commodify the energy in the front, where the audience was at full throttle. I hated it. That show stood out because I can clearly see the disparity between love and greed. The true VIP was the pit, where people were feeling the push and pull of what we do together. The area where the important people stood was a daycare center, for those who feel above the true sentiment of what we did that night. The next night in Los Angeles was amazing though. Of course, the newfound attention wasn't all bad. Menthol features guitar and a voice memo at the end from 2010's indie rock legend Mac DeMarco. somebody that Gene has said on multiple occasions that he looks up to. He even did a verified Genius annotation on the song, saying, "I got to work with Mac DeMarco on this, which is bucket list for me. If you know me, you know I was geeked." Even the message that Mac gives him at the end sounds like something you'd tell someone who was struggling to deal with the pressures of the music industry. "Gene, it's Mac D. Just dropping your line today to remind you that you should take it easy on yourself. Enjoy what you're doing. And if you stop enjoying it at some point, hey, no problem. Don't do it anymore. God bless you. Love you. Ciao." It may have felt like Menthol was the first single of the new era, and in many ways it was, but it didn't actually make the tracklist for the second album, which is called Chaos Now. The first song that Gene released that ended up making the album was called Porn Acting in February of 2022. In typical Gene fashion, it features great visuals, rock production, rap references that he's gonna fake his death and Tupac himself. But there are two things to me that really stand out about Porn Acting that tell us about the second album, and the first is the level up in Gene's songwriting skills. The song feels more specific in its lyrics, touching on the ways that so many of us are fake. "Two-faced friends out my window, you should look around. Half these people got it out for me. Lord knows it's hard to make friends though, I just stick around. Nobody is worse than me." Everyone is fake to Gene in the wake of his recent successes, but he acknowledges he might be just as fake as them. In the chorus, he brings it all together with, "I'm full of shit just like you, I sound like the Count when I do that, but he sounds pretty cool when he does. The second hint at the direction of the album is the mellower, more acoustic sounding guitar strums that we hear in the second verse. At least to me, I noticed that tone of guitar more on Chaos Now than I did on his earlier work. Most of the project was produced by Wyatt Bernard and Austin Corona, although Zach Fogerty returns and appears on 5 songs, including Porn Acting. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's look at how Gene gave us the album single by single. The second single, 3 Heads, opens with a huge guitar riff and an anthemic chorus, and then he goes to borrow the flow from Travis Scott's Uptown for the verse. The song ebbs and flows in energy, bringing it back down before coming back up for an anthemic chorus again. In the video, he hit a bunch of messages that flashed by super quickly, but his fans, being as dedicated as they are, were able to screenshot all of them. I won't put them all in here, but some of them are: "Famous people are extraordinarily lonely," and "Businessmen are actively trying to pimp me and I'm into it," which aligns with what he was talking about on Porn Acting. And a personal favorite, "Life is the only gift that does not come with a non-violent return policy." Gene knows his fanbase is into his visuals, so as he continues to level up, he's leaving little crumbs for people that he knows really care. He returned with the third single and video, Pirate Radio, in September 2022. This one continues on that more acoustic, ballady feel that I was talking about earlier, and the lyrics take a more introspective approach, thinking about mental health and the shit that we put ourselves through in this world. "I'd like to think that I'm all in. I'd like to think that I'm all there. I push my head underwater just to come up for air." Adding to that stripped back approach, he also got artist and producer Johan Lennox to lay some strings on it. The video features some of my favorite Gene Dawson shots, where he's there with this device on his head that's wired up to a bunch of car stereos. I'm not sure what the meaning behind this shot is, but I can tell you it's sick as fuck. So with the stage now set, Gene gave us Chaos Now on October 7th, 2022. He wasn't alone. Earl Sweatshirt appears on the song Bad Fruit, and Isaiah Rashad also has an uncredited feature on the song Kids Eat Pills. Much like A$AP Rocky's feature, these rappers come into Gene's world on the album. Earl Sweatshirt is almost like sing rapping in a way that I don't think I've ever really heard him do before. It sounds great though, and the rest of the album is just as strong. Glory may be one of my favorite Gene songs in terms of songwriting. He talks about how the people in his life view him. "Ex-girlfriend thinks I'm fucked up. I am." It's so catchy that I can't not sing it when I read the lyrics. "Mom thinks that I keep a gun tucked. Yes, ma'am." It's straight to the point, catchy, and it features an excellent vocal performance. Overall, the project feels like a step forward for Gene, although I only really feel that way in retrospect. When it first came out, I didn't really go back to it too much. Not because I didn't like it, just I feel like my life had changed so much between Pixel Bath and this. I didn't think it was bad or anything, it just didn't capture me in the moment. But now looking back at it, I feel like I understand it a lot more. It really is a step forward on the songwriting side. To fully build out the album's world, Gene did a series of 10 short videos on social media and YouTube, where he's once again getting into his indie film bag. Highly recommend checking those out if you've only really listened to Gene and not seen him. Gene went on that aforementioned solo tour after the album came out, and every show was sold out. While this was surely an awesome experience, touring isn't all rainbows and sunshine. Touring is where a lot of artists, especially independent ones, make their money. As I mentioned before, he didn't get a chance to do that after Pixel Bath, when he certainly could have done a smaller headlining tour on his own. As a relatively smaller artist, a lot of your first shows are going to be opening for bigger artists, which in turn puts you in front of an audience that might not know you, but if your music is close enough to what the artist you're opening for is like, then you can steal some fans. However, as great as that opportunity sounds, It also puts the fate of your career in the hands of another artist. And I can't think of anybody who saw the downsides of that worse than Gene Dawson. First, Gene was scheduled to be the support on the Brockhampton tour Here Right Now in 2022, before Chaos Now would have come out. However, a month before tour took off, Brockhampton announced they were taking an indefinite hiatus, or basically breaking up, only playing at Coachella that year and canceling the rest of those shows. So he went on his own tour in 2022 to support Chaos Now after the fact. And he planned to go back on another one in 2023 called the What's the Big Effing Deal Tour. He was set to play 19 shows across the US, mostly in markets that he didn't get to touch on the first Chaos Now tour. But he canceled it because he received an even bigger opportunity to open for Trippie Redd on his Take Me Away tour. He would go from playing smaller rooms to playing amphitheaters and even arenas in some cities. Some of his fans were kind of mad about this online, given that the crossover between Gene Dawson's fanbase and Trippie Redd's fanbase, well, it does exist, is maybe not the biggest sliver between a Venn diagram, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people probably didn't want to pay for that more expensive arena show ticket compared to, just seeing him on a regular tour. Others understood the appeal of what was likely a, dream. Getting to play in a huge venue like the Barclays Center in New York is surely an unreal experience. However, neither side of the argument got to see their point through, because Trippie Redd then canceled that tour. Gene has been a part of 3 canceled tours in the last 2 years, only one of which was actually his own. The other 2, he was at the beck and call of a bigger artist. And these situations tend to hit independent artists a lot harder than they would hit other artists on a label, because there's no bigwig behind him with a bunch of money invested to kind of share the brunt of that damage with. But in spite of his independence up to that point in his career, he was still nabbing some pretty cool opportunities. In 2023, he got opening act slots with the legacy indie rock band Interpol, and also in Europe with Lil Yachty, which shows the strength of his versatility. Not many people could open for both Interpol and Lil Yachty, but if anybody can, it's Gene. In 2023, he started following up Chaos Now with new music, beginning with 2 EPs. The first, Escape Part 1, Gene Dawson as Phoenix, is just 2 tracks, Youth and Delusional World Champion. He spoke to Billboard in 2023 about what these EPs signified, as the titles imply that he's playing a character of sorts. Phoenix is the more aggressive, I have something to say, loudmouth kid. The first track, Youth, or Youth Plus, I guess, reminds me of 80s British new wave bands, kind of like New Order or The Smiths, but with touches of electronic production and like vocal stutters and stuff. He's singing in the way Morrissey would, but with lyrics about DJ Screw. That's the Gene Dawson experience. At the end of the second verse, right before a ripping guitar solo, he says something that might be a direct message to all those suits who went to the VIP section of his Chaos Now tour. I've seen the devil in a suit. He spoke in tongues and told me lies. He dressed in black, but he was white. What's interesting is when he spoke to Billboard in 2023, he went further into his thought process surrounding labels, and let us know that he actually probably will sign with one in the future. But it's a pretty well thought out perspective. Let's hear it right from him. People have always asked me, why don't you like labels? It's not that I don't like labels. I've just never been signed because the business that I've been offered, I've never been aligned with. The things that they offer I don't necessarily need, and the things that I need, they didn't necessarily offer. So I'm not pro-label and I'm not anti-label. I'm anti-bad business. I've structured my career in a way where the utility of a label wasn't paramount. It's totally fine if you want to go buy your house in cash, but I don't think you should be mad at the bank for giving you a loan. I'm not saying labels are just banks, but one of the biggest things that they're able to do is give you utility that you might not be able to get or have. Since I didn't need that, not because I came up rich, but because I figured out a business strategy early to circumvent the fact that I don't need to take out the highest interest loan, I can get it to a place where I go to a label and we can see eye to eye on what utilities I need and what numbers they want to see back as a return on investment. I wanted to become an artist with high ROI, and in order to do that, it's going to take time. Now, at this point in my career, I'm most likely to sign this year to somewhere because I think the growing of our infrastructure is super important, just for the growth of our artist project. I think that doing it indie is noble, and I think it serves its purpose, but at a certain point, you're going to hit a glass ceiling. And also, starting off with the label, you're going to hit a glass ceiling. I think you need to get your career to a place where it's stable enough to where you don't need a label, then go to a label. There's a lot to unpack in that, but the gist is that labels are basically banks. What they do is offer you money in advance of your next project, in exchange for owning at least a piece of that music, if not the whole thing. For that to make sense for an artist, the artist needs to know what they're going to do with that money and how they're going to make it back, knowing that to pay off the label's part on top of theirs, they're going to have to make back more than the label originally gave them. For example, I got an offer this year from a label that I ended up turning down, not because the terms were unfair, they were actually really reasonable, probably the most reasonable that anybody's ever offered me, but because the money that I was taking up front, wasn't really enough to change the way I lived my life or help me do things that I couldn't already do, it didn't really make sense to then owe them that, plus the little percentage that they were going to take on top. If having the cash in your hand in the immediate moment doesn't make the world of difference to you, then it might not make sense to go with the label. But that's enough industry bullshit for now. Let's get back to the second track on Escape Part 1, Delusional World Champion. The fast-paced instrumentation and the lyrics about running for your life and being stuck in the sun mesh with the visuals of Mickey Mouse and a guy with a punk mohawk made out of ice cream to create something that once again represents the coming-of-age story. Somehow Gene continues to find ways to tell that story, but from slightly different angles, in ways that sound fresh. He gave us his second EP in 2023 with Destruction for Dummies, Part 2, Gene Dawson as Nightmare. He told Billboard that this was an Eeyore-type personality because he had recently just gotten out of a relationship and was thus going through a breakup. For those who haven't read or seen anything Winnie the Pooh related, Eeyore is like this total downer donkey character. The intro to the EP, No Scope, is a sad breakup song. Who would have thunk it? Where he sings about seeing rabbits out in the yard while he plays in front of cars. I interpret that to mean he's like stuck looking at other parts of the world, fantasizing about what he really wants, being jealous, but all while putting himself in danger and not paying attention to his own self. As he says later in the song, there's no one to save him when he's stuck. The second track, X-Ray, is more instrumentally upbeat, but the lyrics are just as depressing, about how he's not sleeping, nobody's there for him, and he's a ghost. In that way, it reminds me a lot of Sick Girl Online from Bad Sports. Although it might be about a different relationship given the 4-year gap between the releases. That shit is none of my business. Who cares? It's not TMZ. The last track, Vexed, feels like he's slowly starting to come out of the funk, taking time for himself, ignoring texts, not faking anything. It's another part of the grieving process. The most interesting part of this release is it's the only Gene Dawson release to not get at least one full music video, at least to that point. He gave us a 30-second clip for X-Ray that he put up on YouTube as like a YouTube short. It's definitely not like a fully thought out visual like the kind of stuff that he's been doing. I guess it makes sense though because Eeyore wouldn't be super excited to get in front of a camera and lip sync either, would he? Plus, only a month later, Gene would return with his biggest song and video yet, No Seasons, with SZA. It's understandable he wanted to put all his eggs into one basket, given the association with one of the biggest artists on the planet. And the cool thing is, unlike a lot of collaborations in the industry, their creative affinity is organic. He told Billboard all about how they first connected back in 2021. In the DMs, that's how we started talking. I think it was maybe a day after she had DM'd me. She was working on her album SOS at the time. We hung out for several hours and just talked. It was sick. I didn't realize how alike we were in a lot of different ways. And we worked on some other stuff. No Seasons I had been working on prior, just like arrangements and stuff like that. There's a lot of instrumentation on it, so I think I hit a wall at some point with the song. And then I met SZA. I was like, oh, maybe she can finish my sentence. I showed it to her, and she was like, yeah, I'm super down, this is awesome. So she wrote her verse, recorded it, and workshopped it for a little bit. It's not the most intense story of all time, but it's definitely like, you had to be there. The song itself is a pretty ballad between the two, all about how change in seasons isn't really a thing in California, how it is in most of the rest of the world. So every day is just every day, and that changes the way you go about in your life. Not the most abstract concept for a song, and it's almost weird to hear Gene be like that straightforward in his songwriting. But it's also kind of refreshing because it's a really well-written song. And the flow he uses in the hook is pretty trademark Gene in a good way. And it gets elevated when SZA sings it together with him at the end. I think it's a good, if rather mellow, introduction to his music for somebody who hasn't heard it before. Which, when you're collabing with an artist as big as SZA, there's definitely going to be a lot of people who have not heard of you before who are tuning in. The video is great too. It has these two kids meant to play Gene and SZA while they color, and their parents fight in the background. There's also like the most absurd jump scare that I was not expecting, and it even got me the second time, so fair warning. Gene has started 2024 with a third EP, Boohoo, although he broke the naming conventions of the first two, so it's hard to say whether this is a part of the same series or not. In an Instagram story, he called it an overture for what is next for me, and if that's the case, it's clear that Gene is looking to go big. These 3 songs are probably the most polished in his discography. The second track, Divino Desmadre, was the best received amongst his vocal online fans. It's fully in Spanish, and it's a song about, from my okay understanding of Spanish, running away with a loved one. While the rest of the EP hasn't gone over super well in his vocally online fanbase, like on Reddit, more on that in a little bit, I actually really like the third track, Tastes Like Metal. It might be the strongest vocal performance that he's got from like a singing perspective, and I think the piano is really cool. The one thing about Gene is he stays trying different stuff. So when he goes into something that sounds a little bigger, a lot of artists you'd say are selling out, but for him you wonder, is this like some sort of intentional step into something a little different? So about that Reddit, a lot of Gene's fans were super angry because they ordered the Pixel Bath vinyl, and it took almost 3 years to arrive for most customers. While producing vinyl is a bit more complex than a lot of fans might realize, it's really expensive and there's generally a really long wait time. Almost 3 years is pretty crazy. Part of why it took so long was that this wasn't your average vinyl release. He promised a special holographic cover. It's quite the saga, so we can just look at this Reddit thread that has a timeline that was put together by this user OKOK210. Thank you for putting all this together. Alright, let's get into it. So the vinyl and merch drops for sale on April 9th, 2021. The regular vinyl is $50 and the signed vinyl is $300. And it's supposed to have some other differences beyond just the signature. The post came with a disclaimer. Only order this pre-sale if you are okay with waiting 8 to 9 months for your order to be fulfilled. This order time is completely out of my control. The first update comes on January 2nd, 2022, which is right at the end of that 8 to 9 month timeline. He drops a message in his Discord saying, "Merch is getting wrapped up. Vinyl's still in production. Promise I'm on it." He started beefing with his fans on Twitter, who were complaining about the vinyl's lack of shipping, and called one of them a twerp and said he refunded him. I understand the frustration, especially when the vinyl production timeline is out of your control. But as soon as you're beefing with your fans, people can really start to turn on you. This reminds me of when Chance the Rapper told one of his fans to eat a dick on Twitter around the release of his album The Big Day. People flipped on Chance super hard as well. And most of them he didn't personally tell to eat a dick, they just didn't want to witness that. So 6 months go by before we get another update in July 2022, when he tweeted, "Got the test prints back, they sound great, so shouldn't be much longer." There were no updates until 3 months later in October, when Gene's merch company Turbo Radio sent out an email saying the following. "First and foremost, a sincere apology. Being an independent artist is not easy, especially when you have a lot on your plate. Due to unfortunate events and uncertainty on production fallbacks and lack of communication with manufacturer, we now have an update regarding your purchase. As of October 13th, 2022, we were told that the master is in final production and will be delivered to us roughly January 2023. We are at the mercy of the manufacturer, meaning dates can change depending on manufacturing and shipping. We understand your frustration and we hear you. However, if you can sit tight for a few more months, we promise you will receive your Pixel Bath vinyl. Thank you for 1, purchasing the vinyl, 2, for being patient, 3, for supporting us so Gene can keep doing what he does best." The next update wouldn't come until April 2023, a full 2 years since the original drop date, when Gene posted a picture of a red vinyl on Instagram with the caption, "Vinyl update, they aren't done. Thank you for your patience, I'm just as, if not more annoyed than you are. Just a little longer." This is a bit of a non-update, and surely pissed off some fans for a few reasons. One, that it was basically the same update from like 6 months ago, and also because he was saying he was angrier than they were, and people just don't like to hear that. We'll talk about this more a little later, but artists are not necessarily trained customer service representatives, so it can put everybody in an awkward position. He also replied to a comment a month later saying, "I definitely wouldn't make you wait if I had control over everything. But I don't, but it's okay. Everyone can be upset at me, it's my fault, I chose the wrong company to produce them. I got false updates left and right, and those are the updates I had to give, because that's all I had from them. All in all, it doesn't matter. Everyone will get what they paid for. They're just going to have to be mad at me till then, which is fine. Doesn't bother me because I literally can't do anything about it." I'm not sure saying he wasn't bothered really helped, but I do understand his frustrations a lot. And I also believe he's telling the truth. He was probably given the runaround from his vinyl production company. And vinyl production is a crazy industry. There's plenty of stuff out there about why this could have taken so long. He hopped on Twitter in June to tell a fan that they'll have their vinyl before his tour starts. But then, like we said before, the tour got canceled. Yikes. On Twitter in July 2023, he posted a video of the finished vinyl and said they were done and would start shipping. At least people could see that the thing was real and in hand. But the vast majority of people didn't receive them until December 2023 or January 2024, with that 6-month gap being a little puzzling. There are several possible reasons for this. One, maybe not all the vinyl was shipped to Gene at the same time, and he could only send them out in batches, with his own tour obligations getting in the way if he was the one shipping them out itself. If he wasn't, then it could be another case of working with the wrong company. Either way, well, I think most of his fans have received the vinyl, and many of them are happy with it. This left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, and I don't think it would be a stretch to say that their perception of his later music was affected by this whole fiasco. People who used to love him and blindly follow him are now questioning his attitude, and calling him out for the size of his ego. At the end of the day though, Gene has been somebody who is steadfast in wanting to do things his own way. That means when he does that to labels and the industry at large, a lot of his fans will cheer it on. But when they're the ones who are at the receiving end of him doing things his own way, they might not like it as much. I also think that being independent plays a huge part in this whole ordeal. Perhaps when he told Billboard about that glass ceiling of being independent, it was with the context of the vinyl situation kind of weighing on him. Labels have connections with vinyl production plants. They would have either had this resolved a lot quicker, or they would have told him that some of the things that he wanted to do were a little bit too ambitious, or maybe not possible within that 8 to 9 month time frame. Labels also have teams that could help manage shipping, or get more timely email updates out to the fans, just better customer service in general. They have people who are experienced in fulfillment and whatnot. And lastly, they have social media teams who would maybe be like, hey bro, don't tweet that. Don't reply to that comment. I'm not saying he would necessarily listen to them, and knowing Gene Dawson as well as I do from a distance, I don't think he would, but still, it's just one more line of resistance, right? Ignoring the vinyl situation in this video I think would be a little bit unprofessional of me, but I also didn't want to spend too much time on it, because at the end of the day, we're here to talk about influence and artistry. And there's plenty of that going around to discuss with Gene, as I'm sure you can tell by this video's runtime. The way Gene describes the coming of age experience is unique to him. Nobody is doing it like him. His ability to tap into his wide range of influences, to come out with something that doesn't sound like anybody else or anybody before him, is unparalleled in this generation of artists and in this space. On top of that, his use of visual language is miles above most of his peers, to the point where he might be one of the most common appearances on a mood board for any artist in this generation. This Spanish artist Whiplash had a video that was eerily similar to Gene's Power Freaks video, and Gene himself called out Oliver Tree on Instagram for using similar shots in one of his videos. Whether these claims are valid or not, there's no doubt that Gene Dawson's visual creativity, and that of the people that he works with to achieve his vision, because it's not just him, like I said before, it's reset the meta for creating visuals for artists. Gene has even broken into fashion a lot earlier than most artists are able to. His Turbo Radio merch line is of a lot higher of a quality than most artists at his size. And he also does collaborations with this other brand called Basket Case, which is a personal favorite of mine. I'm pretty sure I found out about Basket Case from Gene. Above all, with all the looks that he's been getting in the last couple years, he's not going to remain one of the industry's best kept secrets for much longer. And as he evolves and moves out of his independent phase into something bigger, his fans are hoping he can retain that it factor and that message that he's been fostering for the past 5 years. No matter how that goes, people will look back on his work so far, especially Pixel Bath, as emblematic of a certain era, a resurgence in guitar-based music, the pandemic, a boom in independent artistry, the intertwining of visuals and music in our social media-driven world. So if you looked at that Pixel Bath album cover and said, ooh, cool cover, and then didn't click on it, today might be your day to give it a listen. Your favorite artist probably already has.